The Celtics lost yet another game last night, this time to their arch-rival 76ers, and it's led to everyone asking, what the heck is wrong with them? I've got some thoughts and went through the footage to provide evidence of some of the things that really bother me about their on-court play. At this point, with their record stuck below 500 and tied for 7th place in the East, it appears this ain't gonna turn around much over the last 21 games of the season. And that means these Boston Celtics are broken. I've let it be known in the past how much Marcus Smart drives me and most coaches crazy. One moment, he'll be hitting a tough off-the-dribble three or throwing a nice no-look dime to a cutting teammate to the rim. And in the next breath, he'll be slamming shots off the backboard, turning it over in staggeringly bad ways, and screwing up a key defensive rotation that could profoundly affect the outcome of the game. Let's take a peek at the last 3 minutes in overtime of their recent game against Memphis as a perfect example of what happens with Smart on a nightly basis. While he's noted for his defense, I see enough mistakes consistently to make me question just how valuable he is. Now, some of them are subtle, like getting beat by Kyle Anderson on a simple shot fake and blow-by, allowing middle, and leading to a teammate's foul and 2 free throws. However, he then posts up a tough defender on the right block and is able to draw contact and hit this wild lefty hook off the glass. I'm not sure he'd ever practice a shot like this, but this is part of the Marcus Smart experience, no doubt. And while he's shooting decently from the line this year, he bricks the crucial free throw. I acknowledge that without Kemba on the floor in this game, it forces Smart to be more of a primary ball handler. But trust me, he shares this duty quite a lot even with Walker on the floor. And down 2 under 90 seconds left, he lets Slow-Mo just rip him at half court and turns this into a layup to double the Grizzlies' lead. Again down 2, he is screened off the ball, and in his zeal to get to the rim, he runs into Valanciunas and gets the foul called on him. This is more a function of his overly aggressive defense, where the refs tend to punish him on iffy calls because he's always running or crashing into people. This one killed me, sports fans. Even though he tries to tell Robert Williams to cover for him while he gets on the high side of Ja Morant, I don't blame Williams for not understanding that Smart was going to be this extreme with his positioning. If you're going to do this, you have to be absolutely connected to the player, not cheat on the high side of the screen and literally create a layup for the other team. I mean, this is inexcusable. You can see Smart yelling at Williams as if it's his fault. Later, he's still complaining to a teammate about it, and all I can say is, can you hear me shaking my head? Brad Stevens is known for his clever out-of-bounds plays, and this one is no exception as we see Smart set the cross screen and catch the defense going with the cutter, good pass, good finish. And down 2, he plays decent defense to not let Brooks go to his right, but Brooks does generate a lot of space and there is no contest on this shot that misses, which directly leads to his best play of the night. With time winding down, a quick pick and roll gets him middle, and with Valanciunas furiously backpedaling against 2 players, Smart lobs it right over the top for the game-tying bucket. When plays are right in front of him like this, and made as simple as possible without extra cutters or reads, Smart can find success. However, in overtime, we get more of the seesaw battle between good Smart and bad Smart. This is a make-or-miss league, and while it's hard to argue against a multi-dribble step-back shot from the elbow, this is basically a double team that he's shooting into and it doesn't go in. This next one made me want to throw my computer out a window. Tie game, plenty of time left, and he's confident he can beat Grayson Allen off the dribble. But what is this? He lifts off the left foot going to his left, sees Slow-Mo get a hand up, and then realizes he can't jump off his left and shoot with his left hand. So he turns back towards the right sideline and shoots this on the way down with both hands. I mean, what? Here's another one of those subtle defensive miscues that Boston fans don't notice, but I sure do. They almost screw up this switch, but because Smart was so late, he ends up flying by the shooter for the contest, leaving him at half court while his man quickly grabs the rebound, finds Valanciunas, and now the Celtics are losing. Down 2, and in the scramble with Ja dribbling, a smart defender would recognize he's got to split the difference between Allen and Brooks, then close out to wherever the pass goes. Instead, he gambles on the nice pass fake, is now so out of position that he is easily lured into the air on the shot fake and gives up the early dagger. Here's a good defensive possession where he has to deal with the much bigger and taller Valanciunas on the roll and attempted post-up, and then does a nice job to box him out and grab the dying Quail out of the air. However, down 4 with plenty of time left, there is no need to start jacking up threes, and yet he comes off this pick and roll out top with lots of real estate in front of him against drop coverage, but instead he stops, feels Allen on his back, and then tries to float through the air towards the basket while shooting the jump shot. From a team dynamic, it's very hard to be a vocal leader who gets on his teammates for not playing properly when you yourself struggle so mightily in this department. I even caught a glimpse of it last night when Jaylen Brown's pass got deflected while trying to pass to Smart. No biggie, just take it out of bounds. But instead, Smart is letting him have it. And I have to imagine that if this isn't a problem in the locker room yet, it will be very soon. Another thing that drives me kinda nuts is watching Jason Tatum drive to the hoop. Of the 74 players who have taken at least 150 shots at the rim, Tatum ranks 58th in efficiency, and of the 43 players who have taken at least 5.4 field goals within 5 feet of the hoop, he ranks 25th. Plus, he drives to the hoop 12 times a game, but doesn't generate a lot of free throws out of the drives, ranking 25th out of 32 players who drive at least that many times per game. The biggest issue is that he drives with his eyes down, and as a result, cannot process visually what the defense is doing. Time and again, he just lowers his head as he attempts the drive, doesn't recognize where the rim is and/or where the help defense is, and gets himself caught in bad situations where finishing the shot is virtually impossible. While his role in this team is clearly as a scorer, he'd be even better, but more importantly make his teammates better, if he could get his eye gaze up. It would enable him to react better to the defense and generate good shots, but he'd also be able to create contact into the defender and make the referee blow his or her whistle. Consistently, we see him shy away from contact when it would be a simple adjustment to get into the body and create it. Not to mention, with his eyes down, he misses wide open teammates on the perimeter. And over the course of a season, when this kind of thing happens and it leads to a bad miss at the rim, you could also get your teammates frustrated with you, and I have no doubt this is happening. Their defense has been wallowing around in the bottom third of defensive rating all season long, and I wish I could pinpoint a couple of stats that indicate why it's been so bad, but like their whole season overall, the numbers just seem to ping pong all over the place. I did see some evidence that defending the three-point shot is one area of weakness in their defense, and after going through some clips, it became pretty clear to me why. Either the coaching staff isn't coaching it, or there's just a lack of discipline on this end, but time and again, we keep seeing players help one pass away off of both the corner shooter and the wing. It happens enough to lead me to believe that this is a defensive philosophy. And in this modern era of three-point shooting, it's death to any defense that doesn't want to rely on proper help rotations from the weak side and keeping their strong side defenders home. This kind of help opens up the easiest passes and easiest shots for an offense, and it was mind-boggling to see how often it happens. Kemba Walker seems like he struggles to be in the right position as he stops cold in his tracks while his man patiently waits in the corner to get the pass and hit the open shot. This one caught my eye since Kemba just starts wandering around, not even realizing the ball was grabbed by Charlotte and they get burned again by an open shot. What? One reason why I think this is how the Celtics want to defend is because we see it a lot on drives from the wing to the middle, and the defender one pass away out top slides over to try and stop the penetration. It's more than one guy doing it, it happens all the time, and you'd think at some point the coaching staff would say to themselves, this isn't working and we need to stay home here. And if you keep allowing middle penetration like this, you're going to give up a lot of open threes. So position your feet properly to stop the middle penetration and you can limit these shots. But it's not limited to middle penetration, which makes it worse. They do this off the corner shooters as well, and it just makes me want to shake my head and ask you if you can hear it. On many of these drives, there isn't any need to help off the corner anyway, as the weak side rotation is in good position. Another reason why it seems like they're doing this on purpose, and there can't be a bigger no-no in the modern NBA than to help like this and give up open corner threes, unless the player you're helping off of shoots below 30% from back there. I had to bring in Jared Weiss, Celtics writer for The Athletic and best friend of The Breakdown, to give us a little more insight into what we're seeing and whether there is any hope to get this season back on track. So, Jared, let's get your take on what's happening with Celtics, because certainly there's a lot of questions here, and I need someone who's been watching them but with a much closer eye than me. Where do we start?
I mean, I guess if you want to start with Robert Williams, that I think is the most revelatory change in the last few weeks, that's a good place to start because he's good. And they finally gave him a chance, and he's proving to be a really good bet. The question, I think, is going to be, how does he look going up against an elite center where he's has a kind of a different responsibility throughout the game than he has in most of these good games that he's had so far. But the offense looks a lot better with him than it did with Daniel Tice, which is a little surprising because Tice was such a solid pick and pop five who was a pretty solid passer in a few different scenarios. But Williams' ability to just kind of play above everybody else just opens up all these new dimensions for the Celtics, the way that they can move the ball.
Well, we're seeing an uptick in three-point attempts over the last couple of weeks. What do you attribute that to?
I think a bigger commitment, obviously, to get those looks. I think also just the fact that Marcus Smart and Kemba Walker are healthy and are running point more, that it's just resulting in kind of the more typical type of drive and kick style that leads to actual three-pointers. But I don't notice a fundamental difference in the way that they're playing and running their offense. I think they're just getting more three-point looks. And I think they just kind of went through a weird drought for a while where they weren't getting any looks. And probably a big part of that was that Tatum and Brown were taking a lot of mid-range shots, and they've got a lot of those out.
For sure, yeah. I mean, Brown certainly has a big uptick in the last 10, 12 games of three-point shooting. So something, is obviously a focus now. And who knew their offensive rating goes up when they take more threes? Go figure.
Oh, I forgot. Another big thing is they're no longer playing a double big lineup. That obviously is going to help a little bit. So that might just be the answer, as simple as that.
Now, the defense is obviously the big thorn on their side. It's been remarkably consistent in a not good way necessarily in the 20s. No matter what they do. I've been trying to pull this apart with the numbers all morning. But tell me what you think is going on there and where they could improve.
I mean, I think a big part of it is just that Smart has been out for a while. And that defense pretty much goes as he goes. And he hasn't really been playing well this year. I think even before he got hurt, his defense wasn't quite up to where it usually was. And then Tatum and Brown, I think, have been a little bit more erratic this season because they've been taking on such incredible usage through most of the season on the offensive end. That's just going to naturally lead to a bit of a decline on the defensive end. And then, they were playing those double big lineups that just, I think they probably were more detrimental defensively than they were even offensively, honestly. And so now they're just kind of figuring out how their actual core lineup works in a more modernized style of 4 wings and guards and a center. So I think they're just starting to figure out how their defense is going to work. And then also on top of that, Robert Williams is now, I think, defending at a high level, I don't know a high level, but he's defending pretty well and obviously makes some incredible plays. But for the first half of the season, he was really working out the kinks on just learning the reads on how to rotate in the pivot, how to take proper angles, how to not bite on every single up fake imaginable. So maybe the defense is on an uptick. It looks good against Houston, but you and I would probably look good defensively against Houston. So we'll see how it looks against, now Hayward is out for Charlotte on Sunday. So the Philly game, which I think Joel Embiid will be back for that next week. And then the night after that, if the defense steps up in those nights, then I think that's probably a sign of good things to come.
Okay, so that's an interesting question as we wrap this up, is that, what is the prognosis for this season for them? Does Kemba Walker, do they get better play out of him? Is there any way to get him out of his shooting doldrum?
I mean, the more good playmakers you have out there, the less pressure there is on Kemba Walker, obviously. So it allows Kemba to kind of pick and choose his spots. So adding Evan Fournier should have a really good impact because they've only had 2 reliable pull-up jump shooters at a time on average every single night, which is really, really bad. And Fournier is one of the best pull-up jump shooters in the entire NBA. I think he ranks 6th in effective field goal percentage on pull-ups with NBA stats tracking data. So he's great at that. And they actually, for the most part, he had 7 threes in the fourth quarter against Houston. Almost all of those were coming off of screens and curls. So they're able to kind of use him as more of a traditional off-ball shooting guard, and he's effective that way. But they also have the option to have him run a lot of offense, especially with the second unit. That's just going to take so much pressure off of everybody. And like, it's very clear that Tatum especially, but Brown as well, needs to have that pressure taken off of them. We're seeing, especially from Tatum, some really bad stretches that are really hurting the team, especially with the second unit. I criticized them after the loss to Dallas, although people took one word from the tweet and completely ran with it, which was not representative of all of what my analysis was. I guess it's my fault for using that word. But the point is that there's these stretches of the game, which pop up a few times a game, where Tatum just starts ignoring everybody else on the court and goes in ISO, and it's a nightmare.
Okay, so what do you think? They're going to turn the season around? They're going to get back into the top 4 in the East before the end of the season?
They're only, I think if they beat Charlotte on Sunday, they're like a half game out of 4th place. That's the funny thing with the way that the East is right now, is that they can be terrible all year long, and that can all just be a sunk cost. And then they just get it together for like the last couple of weeks of the season, get that 4 or 5 spot, and they don't have to play one of the 3 juggernauts in the first round. They could pretty easily make the second round, and maybe at that point they have things figured out enough that they can really be competitive. So the Celtics are in this really lucky situation where they could have one of the worst seasons they've had in recent franchise history and still just kind of fix everything just in time to actually make a run. So they could be in good shape at the end, but it requires everything to break perfectly for that to happen.
Right. And the locker room issues, are those getting cleaned up at this point, or are they still lingering?
I never really perceived there to be locker room issues necessarily. I think it was just that the roster composition needed more balance to it, needed more of a bridge between the 2 superstars carrying everything, the 2 good starters that weren't healthy and weren't performing well, and then all the young guys, who half of whom weren't even getting a chance. And now they've elevated all those young guys into the rotation. Fournier is here to kind of help bridge that gap and have some balance out there. And then if Smart and Walker get better, I think everything kind of fits together pretty nicely, and they do have a chance to compete. Have
you just totally turned my whole thinking around about what this video is going to be then, if that's to be absorbed and believed. So we'll have to find out. We'll see. We'll have to come back and we'll talk about it more maybe in a month or so once we see how this all plays out. But Jared, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Hey, optimism is nice, but it doesn't mean that it's realistic.
Of course, the addition of Evan Fournier has been a positive, as he's been scorching the nets from three-point land, and even Luke Cornett has been able to be a positive, picking and popping his way to a number of made threes, helping this current surge in three-point attempts that has raised their offensive rating a few spots. But if they don't solve the chemistry issues alongside the defensive foundational problems I outlined, don't expect a deep playoff run, but you can expect some major shakeups in the offseason. As we get towards the end of the season and the playoffs, make sure to subscribe and turn on your notifications to get the latest breakdowns on the NBA. Plus, I've got a YouTube membership with tons of extra content you won't want to miss. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and throw a comment down below. After all, at BBALLBREAKDOWN, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You in?